Hi, it's Dr. Syra, and I want to talk to you today about something a bit controversial. Bit controversial. So we've launched our expansion project, which is the community, the online community of people who are looking to explore their evolution, their spiritual growth, the cutting edge of consciousness. And what came up in today's talk was really big, and I wanted to share it here as well for people who maybe aren't in the community or but I think everybody, like I want to tell this to everybody. So here we go, okay? I think Western psychology um, is a bit flawed. Okay, I'm just going to say that. And I might get some hate for this, but I'm just going to say it because it's been my experience as a um, therapist who's rooted in more cultures than just Western culture. There's a piece that's missing. There's two specific pieces that are really missing, and I wanted to speak to that today. So one is community, and the second is spirituality. These things are missing. So let me tell you a little bit more. So as a therapist, as a mainstream therapist, there's all of these rules and parameters around something that's called dual relationships. That's the technical word for it, dual relationships. So what that means is that if I'm your therapist, I can only be your therapist and I can't be in relationship with you in any other way. And I understand the thinking behind that. I understand the impetus to say, if I'm your therapist, I also can't, I don't want to interact with you in too many other ways because it will be confusing for our therapeutic relationship. You might start seeing the humanness in me, and that may somehow be upsetting for you. Right? You shouldn't have to carry my stuff. Like it's about me carrying your stuff. Like it's not really your job as my client to worry about me. So I understand kind of the thinking. What's problematic about it is it's really rooted in an individualistic culture. Like it's Western psychology is like it's individualistic, right? So it's like I can be separate than anybody I interact with. Now, where this breaks apart and where this breaks down is in small communities. So I live in a rural community now. And this thing about it really breaks down because uh, everybody knows everybody. So like when there's a tragedy in the community, it affects like the schools, it affects the transportation system, it affects the mayor's office. Like everybody's impacted when something happens because it's a small community. And so we don't have these like one-to-one relationships. Like I have clients who I see at the market, right? I have clients who I'm going to be sitting in the doctor's. There's one doctor, so we're going to be sitting at the doctor's office at the same time, and we're going to have conversations outside of the therapeutic context. And so it doesn't work in small communities. It also doesn't work in cultural communities. So I am, before I moved to this small town, I'm part of a particular faith tradition, and so we see each other, like me and my clients would see each other at our place of worship. We might be attending the same wedding. We might be invited to the same gatherings. We might be dancing together in circle at our festivals. Like it is happening. And so what I found as a South Asian therapist is I had to be a little bit more flexible and a little bit more creative around this thing around community and making space for there to be more complexity in our relationship than just therapist client. And I'm hoping that mainstream psychology will catch up to this, that we were actually designed to live in human communities, and the idea of the healer or the helper being so separate and so distant from the person needing help is actually kind of unnatural, and it's kind of problematic, and it doesn't really work. And we can put in these artificial barriers and these artificial walls, but I do care deeply about my clients, and that's not going to change because I leave my office. Now, when I teach at the universities, we do talk about like boundaries, and just like with family members, just like with friends, yes, boundaries absolutely are important with all relationships, right? There has to be a place where I can say, I need a little bit of distance, or I need to like eat my meal before I can answer this phone call, or like that. But I think of that as basic self care. Like when we tune in, it's like, oh, this is not the right moment to pick up that phone call. I got to trust that. And so that will apply in all of our human relationships, where we have to kind of like also look after ourselves and not just be in some sort of a role where we're forced to always give and not be receiving much back. But I've had situations where clients will want to give me a gift, like just a small token, not like a big, exuberant, like big thing that's, going to put them into into debt, but just a gesture or token. And in my culture, gift giving is a big part of how we connect with each other and how we show love and how we, it's not a very words of affirmation type of culture. It's a very acts of service and gift giving, right? And so people will do things for each other to show that they care for you. So I can't reject that. Like I can't say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't accept your mango that you brought me," because like that was a thoughtful thing. Oh my gosh, clients, for those who know me, if you ever want to give me mangoes, I will warmly welcome them, but please make sure they're in season. Please. Okay, so that's the first part is community and these arbitrary um, separations that we make. And what I think it's created is this weird split where it's like my therapist knows me and they know me more than anybody else, but I don't know anything about them. And I don't really know if they really care about me or they're just doing their job. Right? So, and that's part of the reason I'm moving away from one-on-one counseling into more group work and into more community-based work because that artificial separation has never worked for me, and it's becoming more and more obvious to me that it's really it's limiting. It's limiting. I don't think it's and again, I understand from a safety perspective, like just like don't be a jerk and like don't cross boundaries like of other people. Like I get that, and that I think is something that all people should have all the time, especially people in positions of any sort of authority. Like you need to know, right? Like you have somebody's like sacred heart in your hands, like don't smash it. So that's one. And again, I might get in some trouble for this. And I know that there's people who will really strongly push back against what I'm saying, but I just, this is what I'm hitting and I need to speak it. So that's one is community. Like we are part as helpers, we are part of the community. We can't hold ourselves separate. And yes, we have to do self-care. And yes, we have to have boundaries. Absolutely. And you're going to, it's human and natural to deeply care if you're in a helping profession, and that doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. And there are going to be times when there's overlap of how you interact with people that you're caring in a caring relationship with. The second piece, so there's community. What did I say the two were? Oh man, community and oh right, the second one is spirituality. So community is the one piece that's missing, and I gave the example of how therapists or helpers are kept separate from the community. The second one is spirituality. When we talk about development, right, the development of the brain, childhood development, how we become, how we, have personalities and identities, it's first of all really really fascinating stuff, and I love learning about it. But what often is missing is what is the essence of the person, right? So when we're doing our healing work and we're letting go of trauma and we're letting go of our our pain of the past, we're moving that stuff off. Like what's actually left in at the essence, and um, psychology doesn't really talk about that anymore. Carl Jung talked about that, right? He talked about the psyche or the soul. Actually, the soul is what's at the foundation. And then that is like this unmoving, unchanging part that persists no matter what life experience has happened to you. So in early psychology, they were talking about that, but it kind of got like pulled out. It got like squeezed out with all of this like brain focused psychology that's just about like the mechanisms of the brain and the processes of the brain and oh maybe we'll throw in some body stuff there maybe but the mind body mechanism is considered the whole thing. And I'm here to say I don't buy that either. I don't buy it. Again, from a cultural perspective, I'm rooted in like, so my ancestors come from India and that part of the world where like the spiritual life is what fuels everything else. Like our spirit, our essence is that it's like the whole goal of this human experience is to kind of get in touch with that and let that lead and guide. And Western psychology doesn't even talk about that. Transpersonal psychology does, which makes me really excited. And that was my training. But it's for many years, I've had to have that as kind of this like fringe thing on the corner rather than the center point. And now I'm stepping really into claiming and owning that actually That's our essence. That's what we're trying to get back to. So all this healing is to get back to this being that's a being, not a doing, a being that is aligned, clicked in, authentic, living this guided life, right? That's not about my checking off boxes or achieving the next outcome. It's actually about being led and guided and having an experience of contentment and real knowing of who we are. That's bigger and much beyond the life experiences that have got us here for this particular life that we're living. So that's missing. And sometimes spirituality might be used in disguise, like like mindfulness. To me, mindfulness is spirituality in disguise a little bit, because it's like coming back to this present moment. Yeah, that's a spiritual concept, right? We need to call it what we need to call it so that people will do it, sure. But it's I'm tired of hiding out and pretending like those are add-ons. They're actually the only thing. It's actually the essence. It's actually the main thing. And so, and again, this might not really fit for you. You might be listening to me be like, "Whoa, Dr. Sarah, you have walked off the deep end. I have no idea what you're saying." And then that's okay. and then and then this was fun. This was a fun journey that we took together. But this is kind of the direction that we're moving into, that I'm moving into in my practice and in my understanding and in my teaching, which is we are community-based social creatures and we're spiritual beings. And so let's put those together and let's bring those into the learning about how to be not just well, but how to be thriving, how to live the life that we imagine we can live. And it doesn't come from this individualistic model where you have to do everything yourself, right? And it doesn't also come from this materialistic model where it's about the three-dimensional experience only, and what you can observe through the five senses only. There's more to our experience than that, and I've had those, and I'm not the only one, right, who's saying that. There's lots of people saying that, but I'm going to be saying that more and more. So those are my thoughts for today. That's what we were discussing in our community, and I wanted to share it here for all those who watch the YouTube videos as well. And I will see you next time. Bye.